Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Ladan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guests are Sarah Hill and Jeff Tarrant, and they are the co-founders of Healium, which is an EEG-based app to control your stress. And so by wearing this helmet, you're able to see your emotions and be able to control your emotions and see it laid out graphically. And again, this is a little bit like, okay, what does this have to do with the brain-computer interfaces, neural implants? I think a lot of what they have to do, this kind of calming sensation, has to do with the vagus nerve. And so we talked about that a little bit in the episode. They haven't really looked into it so far or too deeply so far, but they also think it could be this. And then they're also thinking this could be a good media platform for implantable devices as well, that this could be kind of give an extra interface. Okay, now you have an implanted device. What do you do with that device? How do you kind of translate that information into something that the patient can use? So interesting stuff, kind of kept it a little bit shorter, but definitely a company that you should follow. They've gotten a Series C with $50 million, so pretty cool stuff, and on both app stores. So fascinating stuff. Okay, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Jeff Tarrant and Sarah Hill, pleasure to have you on the show. You guys are the inventors of Healium. So if you've ever inhaled a party balloon, this is who you thank.
Healium, different kind of balloon.
Exactly. So you guys have a kind of EEG or VR technology. It's a media company that based on your brain waves, your brain patterns, it actually changes what you're seeing and can kind of get you into this target zone. And actually, you guys have been around for a while, since like 2013, have raised a good amount of money on the order of $50 million and got apps, VR, and everything like this. So really interesting stuff. So I did a little bit of an introduction, but do you guys want to introduce yourselves? And especially you, Sarah, because you have a very interesting background. Jeff can go over the technology and everything like this.
Sure. I'm Sarah Hill. I'm the CEO of Healium, spelled Healium, like healing. And my background is in journalism. And I met Jeff. He was a family friend, and he actually helped me when, as a television journalist, covered decades of negativity, trauma, suicides, rapes, murders. And out of the blue one day, I started having a panic attack. And through Jeff's practices with neuromeditation and allowing you to see your feelings, it not only helped me, but also helped me in our future career to create a product, Healium, that is content paired with our technology and neurofeedback. Jeff, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Jeff Tarrant, and I'm a psychologist, and my background is primarily in psychophysiological monitoring, so biofeedback, neurofeedback, that sort of thing. I'm the chief science officer at Healium, and so a lot of my role involves studying the impact of these experiences and what happens in the brain and subjectively how people feel when they are using virtual and augmented reality with these BCIs and other kinds of inputs.
How does the product work? What do you do with it?
So there's actually a couple of different answers to that. At the base level, it's a virtual reality experience, right? So you put the goggles on. We primarily work with Oculus Go, but it can also be used in other headsets, and we'll be expanding that as things move forward. But so it's basically an app that you can purchase in Oculus Go. And right now there's about 20 experiences in there that are designed to guide you into specific states of consciousness. So sort of calming states or positive states, things like this. Sarah used the term neuromeditation. Like, how can we assist people in shifting themselves into these specific meditative-based states in virtual reality? So people can use the experiences as a standalone, just the way that they are and just the way I described, but then they can also be used with some sort of a brain-computer interface. So we're currently working with BrainLink Lite as a consumer EEG headband that measures your brainwave activity essentially in the frontal lobes. And so we're able to take that data and link it to the virtual reality experience so that you can see aspects of your brainwave patterns while you're in this virtual environment. And then if you are able to keep your state of consciousness in the desired place, then the experience continues and you move forward. If not, then there's some sort of an interference, something that kind of gives you feedback about your state. So the screen might dim or it might turn a shade of red or something to give you information that's like, uh-oh, I've shifted my states. I'm not focused on the environment or I'm not relaxed. Something happened. So that you can kind of learn to modulate your own internal state kind of in these environments. So yeah, there's kind of two different ways that you can engage.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And I really like this idea because it kind of shows that you can quantify like meditation or calmness. It kind of shows what emotion you have right now. But on one hand, that sounds kind of silly. Like, of course I know what emotion, like I'm happy, sad, or whatever. But you actually might not be aware of it. And so this is kind of a good way to have that in the forefront and be able to quantify that too.
Yeah, through Jeff's work at the Neuromeditation Institute as well, which is our research and education partner, he's been able to quantify how people report feeling better, but actually their brain isn't changing unless you're using a wearable.
Yeah, it's actually, we've seen this in two of our studies so far. For instance, if you're using the virtual reality experience with and without the wearable, both groups report feeling better, right? They're like, oh yeah, I feel less stressed. I feel more calm. I feel happier, all of the things you would expect. And so on the surface, it looks like they're about equal. But when you look at what's happening in the brain, the only group that shows a change in their brainwave pattern is the group that has that wearable interface. And of course, the changes that we're seeing are consistent with what we would expect. So decreases of arousal in areas of the brain associated with stress and anxiety, shifts in the brain toward more of a positive emotional state that you can measure in the brain as well. So you don't see that without the interface. So it's interesting because sometimes people's subjective report is not necessarily what's happening in the body.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So a big thing in brain-computer interfaces is called bioelectronic medicine, especially vagus nerve stimulation is very popular. And that's kind of the calming nerve of the whole body. And it's been implicated in things like addiction and autoimmune disease and everything like this. So actually, when I was looking at this, it really seemed like you guys may have an effect on the vagus nerve. And this could be a non-surgery way to affect the vagus nerve. Do you guys know anything about this?
Yes, and I'll let Jeff's well acquainted with the vagus nerve. We've not studied helium's effect on it, but I'll let Jeff take that one.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question, and it's a little bit challenging, at least from my side of things, to be able to directly measure what's happening with the vagus nerve. There's lots of ways to indirectly measure it. That's something that's kind of on our agenda, is to measure things like heart rate variability or other physiological measurements that probably have some sort of connection to vagal tone. So we haven't done that yet, but it's actually on the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, there are very many people that have a vagus nerve stimulator already implanted. You could potentially tap into those people and be like, hey, let's do Healium with you guys as well in order to check what's going on with it. Because I kind of have a feeling that this is actually what's going on. But you guys actually had, what was it? You guys showed some kind of activity in the brain with stressed versus afterwards unstressed, and it calmed down all parts of the brain. Do you want to describe that a little bit?
Yeah, we have 3 published studies: Frontiers in Psychology, Journal of Neuroregulation, the Scholarly Journal of Behavioral Science and Psychology, all showed that Healium reduced anxiety significantly. And we're a part of a dozen other different studies around the world looking at everything from using Healium from labor pain to post-traumatic stress to addictions and generalized anxiety and pain. You can watch if, we use a EEG cap over all of the head, and you can watch in real time the user's brain patterns shift before Healium and immediately after Healium. Jeff can talk about some of the images that are on the site and what that EEG is actually measuring. I should also mention that helium is not a replacement for any kind of psychotropic medication. It's not a treatment. It's not a cure, not a replacement for professional counseling, which is one of the best things that you can do for yourselves. This is a self-awareness tool and a reminder that there are healing powers inside ourselves and that our thoughts have power to control things, not only in the virtual world, but the real world as well. So, Jeff, can you talk more about what those images show?
Yeah, I think the study you were probably referencing was looking at, and again, Sarah mentioned that when we're doing the research, we're not just measuring the EEG from the headband. That works fine for the neurofeedback aspect, but from a research perspective, we need more than just looking at those frontal electrodes. We'll use a 19 electrode EEG cap so that we can kind of see a lot of different regions on the surface of the brain and then use that data to extrapolate to deeper structures. It's a process called sLORETA. And so what we saw was that there's a specific region called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is, right down the midline from the forehead, kind of stretching back a little ways. And it's a little bit deeper down, but the anterior cingulate has been consistently shown to be over-aroused during states of anxiety and stress. It's like kind of holding your attention on something that you're ruminating about or worrying about. And so it gets kind of stuck in that position when you're stressed or anxious. And so in one of our studies in particular, we only brought in people who scored in a moderate range of generalized anxiety. So they were already reporting a decent level of anxiety to begin with. And what we saw was that after a 4-minute helium experience, that particular region of the brain decreased in its activation significantly. And the control group did not. The control group in this case was sort of a resting control. So they just kind of sat quietly with their eyes closed for 5 minutes. That didn't do much. Actually, to be fair, it actually increased activation in that same brain region just a little bit. It wasn't statistically significant. But again, it kind of makes sense. If you just sit quietly, you're likely to continue thinking about whatever it is you're concerned about, as opposed to being transported into a different environment and getting immediate information on how to shift your state. So that's the primary result that we've seen with that. We've got some other things that in some other brain regions as well. But as far as the stress response, that's the primary finding we have so far.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Sarah, you were talking about it's just kind of an add-on to, counseling or prescription drugs that you might take. Is that something you guys had been thinking about going through the FDA? I mean, obviously it's easier to kind of throw it on the Apple Play Store or, Google Play Store, but is that something that you would think about doing later on, is turning this into an actual treatment? Or would that just be prohibitively expensive?
So yes, that is in our regulatory pipeline, but we need additional data for that and additional studies, which is one of the reasons why this is in its current form. It's a self-management tool and a self-awareness tool. And, again, a reminder that your thoughts have power, because a lot of people don't have that mind-body connection already established, particularly, among our youth. And unless you're an experienced meditator, you might not know what you need to do in your mind to make those brain patterns shift. Dr. Tarrant has a great phrase when he says, this is the stress Olympics right now in the aftermath of COVID and the pandemic, and not everybody's trained for it. Not everybody knows how to quiet their mind or lower their heart rate. Emotion recall and recalling memories of a time when you felt calm or focusing your attention are powerful tools in order to shift physiology. But to your question, as far as the FDA, this is a low risk general wellness device. It will not tell you whether you are positive or negative. It will not tell you whether you have anxiety or depression. It's not meant that way at all. It's meant to be a self-awareness tool and a feeling mirror that you could discover that your body's own electricity that comes from your smartwatch or from an EEG headband can control your virtual world as a metaphor that it can also control your real world as well. Metaphor and reality that it does control your real world.
Wow, that's really cool. And then you guys, so how does the app work? I mean, you based on the brain waves, you have different environments. And then before the call, we were also talking about how this could be implemented into implantable technologies. What does the app look like? What do you control? What are you changing? What kind of media are you changing? And then how can that be used with BCI?
Yeah, so Healium is a transmission of sorts that controls virtual and augmented reality with a biometric input. So it could be a neural implant in the future. Currently, we have not created any content for neural implants, so it'd be interesting. We just don't have the opportunity to do that. We're using externally facing sensors. And you can download the app on iOS or Android by just searching Healium AR in your app store, Healium, or you can go to Try Healium, Tryhealium, tryhealium.com in order to get the links to download our app on iOS, Android, and also on Oculus Go. In June, we'll release a data dashboard that allows our users to track their progress over time, which will be an interesting tool for them to not only track their progress, but to see the data from their brain patterns and their heart rate displayed in a very unique way in a spatial computing environment, in augmented reality and in virtual reality, so that they're not just tracking their own data, they're actually interacting with it. They're able to make a flower stop and start. They're able to illuminate a solar system with their feelings of calm. They're able to hatch butterflies from a chrysalis with their brain patterns associated with focus. And then in virtual reality, again, we have 20 different experiences on the platform. Every 60 days, we add a new piece of content. So as you calm your mind, the higher you float up the side of a beautiful waterfall in South America. As you focus your mind, the deeper you float through a fractal animation. We have cherry blossoms. We have trees that you can transform from a brown and dying that don't have any life in them to something beautiful that's green. It has a lot of blooms. The sun is out. Again, these are all short, little, simple stories that you can easily recall in a stressful situation and give you the sensation that you have control, which we do have control. But sometimes in pandemics and in crises, we often don't realize that the power to heal really lies inside ourselves.
Yeah, that's really cool. That is kind of interesting to have that kind of power to do something without moving, just with your thoughts. Who is your target market? I mean, a lot of this sounds a little bit girly, I guess. I don't know. Like, I can imagine, maybe if it's like a gruff old man, then they're like, oh, yeah, like fix a car or something like that versus, chrysalis or something like this and a butterfly and all this. Who's
Yes.
your target market?
Yeah, surprisingly, the majority of our users are men.
Okay.
And it's used in areas of acute situational confined stress, enterprises, anything that sucks that you have to go through, whether that be a blood draw or a painful procedure, or in corporate wellness programs for their employees. Stress is a $300 billion profit and people killer, responsible for up to 90% of doctors' visits. So Healium is used not only for enterprises as a quick portable way to downshift your nervous system and become more self-aware how it operates, but also from the consumer perspective, we have an e-commerce site. You can order Healium, plug in your wearable that you already have, whether it be an Apple Watch, a brain sensing headband, or an Oculus. You can literally be somewhere else and some virtual peace as a way to interrupt that stress response.
Interesting. Very cool. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you guys wanted to mention?
Just, to go to our website at tryhealium.com, look at some of our studies. This is mental fitness and also mental health hygiene. In today's days and age, it's not enough just to wash your hands. We also need to wash our brains, wash in quotes, and all of the life's dirt that's going on right now, from unemployment to uncertainty to homeschooling our children. As Jeff says, this is the stress Olympics, and we also need to be thinking about our mental health hygiene, not just our physical hygiene, and to understand that our thoughts have power, and to have mental fitness, that you're working out your mind just as you would work out your body.
Yeah. Definitely. I think those are very important ideas. And especially, too, if this could be used in the brain-computer interface, the implantable technologies, I think that would be awesome. So thank you so much, guys, for coming on. And yeah, I hope people utilize this platform.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and good luck to you. Appreciate your good information.
Thanks for having us.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.